glorying in the heyday of motor racing at the BBC, now on BBC4, beginning in the 50s and the rock and roll years of Sterling Moss and Mike Hawthorne. It's a good thing, that petrol emotion.
This is the beginning of something new, something in which up to now Britain has been lagging behind the times.
And Sterling Moss has achieved the ambition of a lifetime.
Television newsreel cameras took these exclusive pictures.
Well, nice piece of motoring, Sterling. You've done it again.
Thank you very much.
Beaten a lot of chaps. Good chaps, too, on the same car as you had. What do you have?
I'll have an orange squash, please.
Orange squash for the man, Warren.
One of the biggest traffic jams ever occurred last Saturday, when every road leading to Silverstone, Northamptonshire, was packed nose to tail for 30 miles. Eventually, 150,000 got in.
Here is motor racing history being made. The Grand Prix, the first ever at Silverstone, honoured by the presence of the King and Queen and Princess Margaret, and to whom are presented race officials and the cream of the world's drivers, including John Cobb, the fastest man on land. There are British and French and Italian and Swiss and Argentine drivers here. Yes, and Siamese too. "21 cars are now ready to lap this 70 times. They're lined up at the start, that's the bottom straight on the left there, in 6 rows. The starter's flag is raised, and they're away. 158 showing from the very beginning that they have the lead. Heavy curve and it's line ahead for the Alphas of Fangio, Farina, Fagioli and Parnell. And so it stays lap after lap while Vera's Maserati leads a howling pack behind. Lap speeds are higher than ever for Silverstone. The leaders clocking steadily between 91 and 92. The remainder in the upper 80s. Number 2 Alpha, he's on his final lap. And his touring posture shows just how easy it all is. 1, 2, 3, Farina, Fagioli, Parnell. 3 victorious Alfa Romeos, 210 miles at over 90 miles an hour. Il Dottore Giuseppe Farina, designer, engineer, and perhaps the fastest driver in Europe. But he finds this a much greater ordeal.
The Grand Prix of Europe. Sono felice di essere tornato all'Alfa e di riprendere con questo auspicio le corse del 1950.
And here comes the rector now in that lovely, nearly 20-year-old Talbot of his. Good morning, sir. We've been waiting for you. Now, Rector, tell me, how do you find that the new petrol affects your fine old motor car?
Well, I think it's quite definitely 100% better than it was before the new branded petrols returned on the market.
As much difference as that?
Oh, yes, I think so.
Ladies and gentlemen,
must admit that I feel a glow of national pride when I'm told that the motor industry earns nearly £1 million a day in foreign currency.
Ah, now isn't that handy? This is luxury indeed. And for all-weather motoring, in the sort of winters we usually enjoy in Britain, it's really a strictly practical idea too.
Pancho, the meteoric Argentine, among the 4 leading Alphas round Beckett's. They're all running like clockwork, occasionally changing places, but just a conquering convoy.
More than 100,000 people crowded around the Silverstone racetrack in Northamptonshire on Saturday for the year's first international car race there.
By the 4th lap, young Sterling Moss, driving his Jaguar, was out in the front, and as they came under the bridge on their way to Woodcote Corner, Moss stayed in the lead for good. The lead stayed in the young but most capable hands of Sterling Moss, the 21-year-old who is, I think, probably Britain's greatest racing hope today.
Well, now that we're in the depth of winter again, even though that may be hard to believe, the age-old problem of slippery roads comes up and the dreaded skid is in the minds of every motorist. I think you would agree, Inspector, that the skid is a nasty thing, or at least it can be.
Yes, nasty thing. The trouble today is that most motorists think they're very capable of driving, but when you mention the word skids to them, they're horrified. Mm-hmm. They panic on the road, and they don't know what to do.
Well, to me it's been a wonderful day. And with all the many British firms and British industry who have helped and been behind this endeavour, it's grand to know that we have taken one more step in maintaining Britain's Triple Crown.
Shake my honey, please don't lose it. The rhythm that gets into your heart and soul. Let me tell you, baby, it's called rock. They say it's gonna die, but honey, please let's face it. Well, they just don't know what's going to replace it. Everybody's like calypsos, I've got nothing on. Real country music that just drives along. Well, hello, Bobby.
Mille Miglia, which is a race that was 1,000 miles around Italy, where you had a really fast sports car. I had a Mercedes SLR, which would do about 180, 182. And I had a man called Dennis Jenkinson beside me. He has a beard. And we did this race. We averaged 97.97, I think. We did 10 hours. And it was an incredible event because you have to pass about 500 or 600 people. Well, half of them off the road, it's true. But, I mean, going along at speeds of 180 on the ordinary road, and they weren't like they are nowadays, you know, they weren't very good roads. Oh, there were many things that happened in the event, and it was just a great event, you know, and one that I look back upon possibly as one of my greatest races.
Tomorrow morning at 03:41 hours, a time of day which I think most of us have forgotten since the war, the first of the 92 British competitors who've chosen to start from Glasgow, and this is the 27th Monte Carlo Rally, will leave this very spot as soon as Mr. A.K. Stevenson, the Secretary of the Royal Scottish Automobile Club, gives them the go. Well, you may have gathered that there's a bit more in this rallying business than meets the eye. Of course, Jack and I, going only two up, have to share the job of driving and navigating. And navigating is in itself quite an art. You need a complete set of fairly large-scale maps of France, and of course some good matched stopwatches like these. Special equipment with a car as splendid as this, we've decided to keep it to an absolute minimum, but we have one or two things which might interest you.
This is to go under our tyres only if we are really stuck.
And if the worst comes to the worst,
always have the trusty spade.
special lightweight racing spade, and inside, as I said, down to a minimum, specialized tyres, two of them, no chains, quick lifting jack, pressure bottles to blow up the tyres, and a couple of hats to keep our ears warm. Well, there it is. If we've whetted your appetite for this year's Monte Carlo Rally, there'll be plenty of reports throughout the week on both sound and television.
Good evening to you from Liège, the city of lights in the valley, where for once the huge slag heaps of the collieries look quite pretty, streaked and lined as they are with snow. Just after I'd got clear of the town, it started to snow. It was quite a stiff snowfall. Gordon was asleep in the back, the roads deteriorated rapidly, and when we got to the route check, we had to wake Gordon up, and he hasn't been able to go back to sleep since, after he saw the ice and snow on the roads.
I think it's a miracle that our insides are continuing to function on a haphazard intake of coffee, tea, bottles of pop, and the occasional glass of champagne.
Starting all together at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, competitors just keep on driving round the course as fast as they can until 4 o'clock the next day, stopping only for refueling or breakdown, or to change drivers. 2 drivers are allowed to each car.
position as I speak is that the 300 SLR Mercedes, driven by Britain's Sterling Moss and Juan Manuel Fangio of the Argentine, leads at an average speed of 116.5 miles per hour. And all on that same lap in pursuit are the other remaining Mercedes, driven by Kling and Seymour, the Rhodes Hamilton Jaguar and the Hawthorne Buick Jaguar, both of which, of course, are official work-centered cars. A tragic blow overtook the event some 6 hours ago when one of the most terrible accidents in the history of motor racing occurred not 200 yards from where I speak. The Mercedes, driven by the French veteran Pierre Levesque, struck the protecting earth bank immediately in front of the crowd at something over 120 miles an hour. The engine tore through the spectators, bursting into flames.
There were no victory celebrations at Le Mans that year. A British car, a British team had won. But for once, there was little joy in the triumph of Mike Hawthorne and Ivor Buick.
Here we are, we listened to them come by. Here's Sterling Moss in the Mercedes. There's Fangio, about 3 cars length between them. They've closed right up. Fangio with his brown helmet.
Still Sterling Moss leads by 2 cars length, and there's less than a quarter of a mile to go now as they come into Tad's corner, and they're going to lap Musso on the Maserati. No, they're not, and the crowds rise to greet Moss. And Moss is waving Fangio up, and they're going to go across the line in echelon port, giving the victory in the RAC Grand Prix of 1955 to Sterling Moss of Great Britain from Juan Manuel Fangio of the Argentine. Tad's corner, Sterling Moss coming up to go into his last lap. And as he flashes past the crowded stands now at something like 110 miles an hour, coming up to the Melling Crossing, the first time in motor racing history that a British driver and a British car has ever won the principal motor racing event in the world. He's coming into his last corner at Tad's. He's already acknowledging the cheers of the crowd. And they raise and cheer to a man. Watch it. And Sterling Moss has achieved the ambition of a lifetime.
Some new rules applicable to pedestrian crossings in this country come into force on the 1st of July. And my first question, Mr. O'Neill, is precisely what are these new rules?
This is the beginning of something new, something in which up to now Britain has been lagging a quarter of a century behind the times and behind most other countries. This first stretch of the London to Yorkshire motorway up to Birmingham is the start of a network of brand new highways. Eventually that network will cover the whole country.
Well, this magnificent new road gives you a glorious opportunity to go as fast as you want for as long as you want. In a few days' time, we'll all have the chance of the freedom of the road, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy it. I certainly am.
To feel alive.
Into the north turn, and the fantastic Fangio takes Collins on the inside. And with a lap and a half to go, he leads the race. A race in which he broke the lap record.
In motor racing. What a fantastic year that's been. World champion Juan Fangio retires. He names Sterling Moss as his likely successor. But Moss, ever the runner-up, faces fierce rivalry from Mike Hawthorne.
When they line up for the last Grand Prix at Casablanca, he has only to finish second to win the world title and make Sterling Moss once again runner-up.
In that high-shouldered van wall, Moss knows there's still a chance for him. He has to win, drive the fastest lap, and keep Hawthorne out. But Hawthorne sticks close to him. Everything else goes Moss's way. He leads, he drives the fastest lap. He'll win the world title if Hawthorne cracks. Hawthorne takes no chances. He nurses his motor. He doesn't have to win. He only has to finish second. And that he does. Just for once, the man placed second is more important than the winner. Sterling Moss has won the last Grand Prix of motor racing's most exciting season. But it makes no difference to the World Championship. Moss is the runner-up.
What made you retire?
Well, I've achieved my ambition. I've been racing for 8 years, and I think a time has come when one must retire. And I think with a racing driver anyway, one must choose the right moment.
Good evening. Welcome to Sports View's Gala Night, coming to you tonight direct from Grosvenor House in the West End of London. Now, in front of me here on the desk is the trophy that in about an hour's time will be presented to the sportsman or woman whom you at home have chosen BBC Sports View Personality of the Year. So, as we look around this great assembly tonight of the top personalities in sport, we begin to pick out those who must be very high in the running for tonight's awards. Now, I gave you, remember, the leading half dozen last week. There's the motor racing table. Mike Hawthorne, easy to pick out, even though he has retired. Well, now close by is the swimmers' table. Ian Black, European champion and world record holder from Scotland.
And now, as we've already said, we're showing a short tribute to Mike Hawthorne. The programme, as I see it, from Scotland, will now be in about 10 minutes' time.
Mike. That's how everyone knew him. For John Michael Hawthorne, world champion, was Mike to the world. Motor racing was his life. And now, when he was racing no more, he is killed. Motoring.
Marking the closure of Television Centre here on BBC4, a lineup of iconic programmes begins with Kenny Everett next. In our Alien Nation season, Stephen Gates asks, can eating insects save the world at 9? Then marking the second anniversary of the Fukushima disaster, surviving the tsunami, my atomic aunt from Storyville at 10.